Hello and welcome to this video. My name's David Thorne. In this video we're going to be talking about using promises with Firebase's database or Firebase Database. Because at the moment you've just got to basically get the value from the database using a callback and so on, and then you go into callback hell. Now Google has also got a fantastic library called Promises, which allows you then to wrap it into promises also with async and await. Just like you've got in TypeScript, JavaScript, and so on. So let's go through the problem first, and then we'll start implementing it with promises. I don't think this is going to be a quick tutorial, but it's more going to be kind of like how I'm going to make lots of extensions with Firebase Database, references, snapshots, and so on to make it a little bit nicer. So the first thing I've got here is a simple person struct defined that has ID, name, surname, age, and it's codable. So it's nice and simple. And as you can see, in order to get it to save into the database, we've got to encode it, and then we've got to turn it into an any object, basically really here, and in this any object here, and then we can persist it to the database. And the end result, if we run it, is nothing more than watching the database being filled up with the object that we've just asked it to save. Nice and simple. Okay, so nothing difficult there. But now if we want to read the data from the database, we can just comment this out and then say reference and then database reference people, and then we've got to say observe, and we'll say value, for example, or we can say child added as well, and then snap, and then we've got to say dic here for dictionary, and then get the value as ns dictionary. And if it's not, then we're just going to ignore it. And once we've done that, we have to go through the trivial thing now of putting it into data. So we're having to do, once again, this with our dictionary, pretty print, and so on. And now we can have our person of JSON. Decoder we want now, David, and we can say person here and data, and now we have our person. So it's nice and simple, and we run it and we'll see that we get down the bottom here the person's been spat out. And let's just kill all this other stuff that's been okay. We'll just run it again just for the sake of seeing it a little bit clearer. Okay, and we get the person. So the question is right now is how can we get this out of the database without using promises first of all. All right, and what we have to do here is we're going to say background. All right, and this is going to be a dispatch queue, and it's going to be lazy, so we're going to return it like this, and background queue attributes is then concurrence. And what we want to do here is essentially run this here, and then we'll say a group, group.enter, group.wait, and then we've got the person. So we're going to have then the person here is going to be this, and we're going to print the person, and then we're going to move this here, and once we've got the person, we're going to say group leave. Okay, and this is doing exactly the same thing, but what we do need to do in this situation is then just to kill it, because we only want one of them. And we run this again, and we'll get exactly the same thing. And as you can see, we get exactly the same thing once again. Now, this seems all well and good, but let's now take this and put this into a method, right? And what we can do is directly put it into a method on person, for example, and say get, so say added doesn't really make much sense right now, just saying get added. So we'll run this, we'll say get ID. It makes more sense. So we'll say we have to put Firebase Database here, and you'll see shortly how much nicer it's going to be with promises. ID, and we'll say value, and we'll remove all observers once we've got it. We get the value, it's exactly the same thing, and then we'll just return and then we'll force unwrap it, right? So it's actually going to be, and that compiles, which is good. So we can now this is the important thing, we've got to have it on a background task still, all right? But we can dump all this code now, and we can say person.get, oops, oh, we didn't have the, oh, sorry. We wanted it to be static, all right? And the ID is here that we want, and that's ID. That's better. And this works exactly the same. And we run it now, we're running it synchronously, all right? And it works exactly the same, but it's got to be on a background thread. So we've got to know that when you run this code, it's being run not on the main thread. Otherwise, it's going to block the main thread. It'll still work, but it'll block the main thread. So let's look at this code right now, and how can we now have this so it's running also with the possibility of throwing also, yeah? Now we can use promises once again, and we can then turn around here and we can create another one. And this time we'll say it's of type person, right? And all we've got to do is then make a new promise, and this is going to be a type person, and this has then to, in the constructor, it then has resolve and then reject and so on. So what we have to do is we have to copy this, place this here, and this time we're returning our promise. We don't need the dispatch group anymore, so this can be gone, and we don't need this wait anymore, and we don't need this return anymore. All we need to do is, once we have the person here, and this can go as well now. Once we have the person here, we can then say resolve person. All right, nice and simple. So let's come back to our view controller, and and we'll say then p person for promise person, and we'll copy the ID as well once again, and we'll just give the compiler a little bit of help here. We need promises here, and we'll just give it some help. Okay, now this is a promise will still run synchronously, all right? So, okay, let's name this to promise, so don't have any problems with it. There we go. All right, this person promise still now has to be thened. Okay, so we actually still have to get it. Oh yeah. Okay, and then we've got the person here as well. All right, so we'll say person in the then, and we'll print it out. Okay, and we can build this, and this will still work exactly the same. So now we're going to print out person, and we're going to print out person in the then p. And as you can see here, person in the then p took a little bit of time. Now we can do this a little bit better than this. We can basically say we can wrap this in a wait, and this will do exactly the same thing as what our code did before. But this needs to be in a try. I don't like doing this normally, but for the sake of keeping it in one line, we're going to do it. Now we'll run it again. Oh, we're just going to get the normal person here now, because we don't. It's not in a promise anymore. It's been unwrapped. This is confusing me now. Oh. That's confusing me now. Is it not the Google promises? Ah, that's not very funny. We want Swift promises, I think it is. It was Swift promises. Yeah, promises Swift it is. Sorry, my apologies. So let's just run pod install once again. And should still build it again. Okay, now we should get it. That's better now. Okay, now we can run it again. And we get the same thing. All right, so this way you have the redundancy of, well, you can do it either way. Now I understand that doing it with a callback is also fine, but it just causes so many problems if you want to do things. you have to wait until the callback's done to do another task, to do another task, to do another task. Now, it can be, for example, that we add some complexity to it, right? So let's add another object now and say address, all right? And this is going to be so house number, streets, town, county or state, whatever you want to call it, and country. And we'll give it, just for the sake of this, we'll give it an ID as well. And we come to the person, and we'll now give this an address. Okay, so it can be that, okay, we need to make this codable as well. Now, it can be that this just has an address ID, okay, and you need to load the address as well. So that's in one database, and you've just put the address ID in another database. So let's come to the database, and let's put address ID is then equal to something else, and let's save the address. And in this situation, we can do it once again with promises. Okay, so we can save promises and Firebase Database, and here we can say save, and it's going to give us an address in return. So now we can say our reference is going to be this. Whoops. So addresses, for example, and we'll say it's going to be the ID as well. All right, and then we can say set value, and in this situation we want to use the completion hand to know whether there's an error or not, and so we have to say that there's data, which is the problem at the moment. And come back to view controller, or here, sorry, and you have to decode and encode and do all sorts of stuff on it again. So now we have to get the encoded and JSON encoder encode this, and data is then equal to any, so encoded, and so on. So now we have that. Now you can do the data. Now we need the promise once again, and this is going to be that here, and then once again we'll say resolve and reject, and when it's all okay, I believe that was error, and then I need to self here, and I believe this was error then reference. Yep, so data, and then we got the error, and then we got the reference, which we don't need. Right, so if the error is equal to nil in this situation, then we can just continue on. Else, we can say reject, and we're out of this already. which is really cool. Otherwise, we can say resolve and to be self, all right, because we know it's persisted now. So there we have our save method. So we can come to here and we can say a new address, and we're going to get a new reference to it. And child is here. Okay. We want a new ID, so let's get a new ID. House number 2, I don't know, test street, test town, test county, test country. Okay, so now we have this. Now we want to save, so let's say remote address now, and we can say once again await here, and now we can let's just comment that out. Whoops, wrong one. Let's do this and save the person and the remote address so we know that it all worked, and run this. This will now persist our address in the database, which is what we want. And there we go, our address is now there. So now that we've got this ID, let's update this with the now we have the address here, right? So once we get the person, let's remove this now and come back to this code again. Now we have this person. Let's use the promised one. Now we want to load the person's address, right? So we need now another method that can do exactly the same thing, but for an address this time. So let's just copy this. And the code does get a bit it's duplicated a lot. And let's just do it here. Yeah, and then the ID as well. And we say address here. It's all good. And then we return the address. Oh, I did the wrong one. That should work. This is probably not liking it because of the cocoa pods. That's better. Okay, so now we can come back to here. Okay, so now we have both styles are doing this once again. Okay, so now we can actually load the address based upon the person's address ID. Yeah, now based upon the person's address ID. So let's run this. And now you can see it's outputted the person and the address. Now it can be, for example, that we can say here that the person has a property that is an address that is then optional, right? So once we retrieve the person here, we can say this as well, and we can do person dot address equals address promise person address ID. All right, and now we can run this. And this is probably stopping, I'm guessing that's blocking. It's blocking the code from what it's doing, right? Yeah, so that was blocking it. So what needs to happen here is you need to have a different loop once again. So this needs to go in the person. This needs to go on its. This is what we want here. And it needs to come like this, all right? And I'm guessing this will probably work now. There we go. All right. So because this try await was blocking this thread already, and Firebase observe is called on the main thread. So this was blocking the main thread from working, which was not going to make it work. So we had to come off onto another background thread once again. Okay, but now you can see that the address actually now has an optional address, which is cool. So now we can come here and remove the address, because when a person gets created, then the address is already there as well in one line, right? And you know that you're not messing around with any callbacks. And it can be that this goes on to be even more complexer. You understand what I mean? It's so now you've got your synchronousness with doing asynchronous tasks in the background. There's a lot more that you can do with the Google promises or the Swift promises and so on, but that's not really what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you how you can utilize the two different forms of doing it with promises and so on. Yeah, that's it. You know, there's other ways and means of doing this, but it's just a sample. You know, I hope that you've learned something from this. If you didn't, then write in the comments. It was literally just a spontaneous thing that I thought I would do. And yeah, so there it is. Yeah, write in the comments if you have any questions. Didn't like it, write down what you didn't like about it, or maybe what you didn't understand about it, what you think could be done better. Thumbs down if you didn't like it. Subscribe if you want to be notified of all new videos that I'm going to do and so on. Otherwise, I just hope you learned something. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.